Welcome. This is the Genesee County Compassion Club show. I'm your host, Jeremy. Back here at All Points TV. We got Eric Gunnels in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also have John back behind the camera making it happen here at All Points. How's it going today, John?
I'm doing really well.
It's a beautiful day here in Flint. We're glad to be back here in the studios. We want to share with you what's going on at the G3C, get you up to date with what's happening with medical marijuana across the country, and any other updates we can come up with for you. So first of all, let's get through our events. We've got this Friday. It's going to be lots of fun at the club from 4 to 7 p.m. We have honored special guest John Terbeek coming in, also along with Eric Gunnels coming in. It's going to be a good evening. It's going to be a lot of fun. And for those of you that don't know, John Terbeek is the gentleman who sued his own township over the medical marijuana law and went all the way to the Supreme Court and won. So we'll get to hear his story, find out just exactly what he did for us. I know a lot of us would like to get a little more detail from the man himself.
Yes.
But he's certainly a hero in our community, and we're going to be honored and blessed to have him. And then also we'll have Eric Gunnels, who's running for, now, is it 48th?
48th District of State
Yes,
Rep.
I got the number right this time. 48th District. That is our district. That's the district that the club resides in, and many of you personally reside in as well. So running for 48th District in the State House Representatives, looking to support him as well. So come on out on Friday, 4 to 7. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a blast, and we're going to make it happen.
I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Other events we got coming up here, obviously 710 party. It's just around the corner. It'll be here before you know it. I know we just got done with the big cup event. It was a lot of fun for everybody. It almost seems like you got Labor Day, the cup, 4th of July, 710. We're a busy bunch.
Yeah,
So good stuff.
You don't think it was planned that way.
Yeah. Summer's flying by, but it's good stuff. So be there, all right? 710 party.
Right on.
Our softball team's doing pretty well. We're going to be advancing to the playoffs, so congrats to all the players on the softball team. I know our golf league's kicking booty as well. I guess we're going to have to get some scores from the golfers, see how the league's doing. And then we do have our golf event coming up this summer. I know it's in August. We'll get you some more details on that as we get closer to the date. But it looks to be a fun event. Usually we have that out at Copper Ridge. And not being a golfer, I can tell you I look forward to the delicious steak that comes with the event. And it is amazing. It's one of my favorite steaks all summer.
Nice.
All right.
I've never been a big golfer myself either.
I don't know. I tell you what. Go to Copper Ridge. It's worth it.
Right on.
It's worth the 9 holes to get the steak. Or whatever it is.
Right on.
So, all right. We got some news we wanted to share with you. Let you know what's up with marijuana around the country and the world. And I was kind of interested to read this article. It's about Uruguay. Uruguay, a couple of years ago, in fact, we reported about this on the podcast when it happened.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, Uruguay was the first country to legalize cannabis. So not just decrim, but actually legalize it. So they're actually, producing it, selling it, so on and so forth. And obviously there's just like everywhere, there's a black market in Uruguay as well, where people are getting cannabis off the street, if you will, not through the regulated licensed market that's been recently created by the government there. And the interesting part that brought this article to light was the fact that the regulated program that has been provided by the government is not providing enough weed. So kind of interesting there. Folks are going to the pharmacy to get their medical marijuana, and it's not there. They're running out. It seems to be happening across the country. And obviously there's more of a demand there than there is a supply. So pretty interesting. And we'll keep track on that. The backside to that story is Uruguay was one of those countries, when they did legalize it, they were talking about how they were really going to be amping up production and going to be having a large volume of cannabis flowing through the system. And they also talked about some incredibly low prices. I remember seeing prices in the neighborhood of like $50 for a pound of marijuana.
Whoa.
Ridiculously low prices.
That's ridiculous.
So it seems to be that maybe the market isn't exactly what they thought. Maybe there's a little bit more market there than what they originally had calculated for. But at any rate, Uruguay, looks like the black market is still operating. Folks are still finding cannabis in that means, but they want to have it be tested, regulated, be legit, basically. And so they've got a ways to go.
Right.
But obviously the program's working to some extent. They're running out.
Right.
All right. Other news in the news today. This is kind of good news, kind of big news, really. The UN Drug Committee that was formed years and years ago, the UNDCP, the ones that kind of make the policy at the UN level about marijuana and all other illicit drugs as well. They recently had a committee form to specifically study cannabis. And the result, in a nutshell, from the committee is that cannabis is a relatively safe drug. Of course, most of us already knew that, and it's interesting that the UN just figured that out. I mean, there must be some really dense people, but they run the world, so apparently we need to listen to them. And I guess this is a step. It's a step in the right direction.
It is.
We need to have the UN change their drug policy, and that way other countries that participate in the UN agreement can still be compliant, such as like Canada, which just recently legalized cannabis for adult recreational purposes. Obviously, they already had a national program on the health level. And those are violations of their UN treaty. Just like as our government looks the other way while our states continue to do what they choose, that in itself is a violation of the UN treaty. So really, in the spirit of keeping things compliant and doing things on the up and up and being legit, the UN needs to change their policy. And we've talked about this in the past, but this is a step in that direction.
Yep.
So that's a good thing, albeit a very small baby steps. Baby steps to legalization.
Yep, we're getting there.
They're taking baby steps. So at any rate, they had a report. Agency surveyed 953 cannabis patients from 31 different countries. Most said they'd been using cannabis medicines for several years, currently being advised on treatment by doctors. And although a majority said they'd also tried cannabis prior to getting a physician's recommendation, medical conditions for cannabinoids were most often used as treatment were back pain, sleep disorders, anxiety, depression, post-injury pain, multiple sclerosis, sleep disturbances, and anxiety were most common, along with pain. At any rate, also with that report, they did include vital information, giving credit to the decreased use of opioids. So I think that is bringing the use of cannabis more and more to light. And I have seen quite a few different mainstream outlets latch onto that. And in fact, actually, the recent debate that was just held at the state level with Jeffrey Hank and a gentleman from the, I guess I'll just call it the recreational opposition side.
Anti-cannabis, right.
Anti-cannabis lobby. It was an excellent debate. I recommend you watch it if you can. It's available on Facebook. But one of the things that they did admit to, or sort of acquiesce, is that cannabis is impacting opioid use. And just on the way here today, on the way to the studio, I was listening to NPR, and they were talking about that the fact that there's 57 different bills right now proposed on the federal level in response to the opioid crisis, as they're calling it, albeit a self-created one. But at any rate, obviously it's a big topic right now across the country, and one of the solutions is cannabis. It still provides relief to the patients, and it provides a means of getting off from the opioids as well, in a better way than what, say, methadone or some of these other synthetic opioids provide.
Right.
So pretty good stuff. So the UN is moving in the right direction. They're talking about bringing down research barriers. They haven't done it yet, but they need to. Obviously, they need to have rescheduling in the U.S. Similar items like that across the world in different countries. And I think it's interesting that they continue to talk about the need for research when really all they need to do is go to Israel and say, what do you know? They've been researching it for nearly 50 years. Legitimately, not just backyard research. But at any rate, UN's moving forward. That's a good thing. Not that you can really call up your UN ambassador or whatever.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Check it out. How you doing?
Yeah, hey, this is Johnny. Just calling in to the United Nations Drug Council, and you should do that. All right. Other news regarding cannabis. This was interesting. A lot of folks talking about this last week. Donald Trump talking about, he might possibly support cannabis legalization. He could possibly do it. I don't know. I could do it. I don't know. It could be huge. I don't know. And I just saw a story today that maybe he's just using it as a bargaining chip to get certain justices elected. Who knows?
Right.
What's really the truth? But at any rate, that is a president stepping up and saying he might possibly support a change. It's about the most lukewarm, piss in the wind kind of thing.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Right.
Okay. But I will say this much: if President Trump was to do that, and he was to do it in a way that is positive, that is not shady or just like still going to lock people up and so forth. If he was at least to just take it off the scheduling, or at least decrease it below, like, I would say, what, a 3?
Yeah. I'd go for a 5.
Yeah, I'd go right. Take it right off the damn thing, if anything. But if he was to do that,
next
then
aspirin.
I think I would have to say, and then President Trump would be right on his way to becoming one of the better presidents we've ever had. And I would say that because it takes a tremendous.
Let me take the before you go too far.
It
does, and that's why I brought it up. I will at least give him credit for what he said.
Yep, I'll give him credit.
But the guy says a lot of stuff.
But I will believe it when I see it.
Right, okay? That's true.
I'll believe when I see it. Trump says a lot of things.
That's a measure for any politician.
That's a measure for any politician.
That's the measure. Is I'll believe when I see it.
I'll believe when I see it.
Not to take the wind out of your sail, but actually,
he hasn't done nothing yet to really impress me.
He hasn't done anything.
Right.
And what has been done is that first we have to remember that presidents don't make laws.
Of course.
That's an executive branch, and at any rate. So, on one hand, is he blowing smoke? Yeah, probably. But on the other hand, what has been done in response to this is there was a bill introduced, and it was called the States Act. What the States Act is it's basically just another bill that's been proposed to adjust or modify cannabis laws on a federal level. And this one here is probably one of the most mild, weak-ass proposed ones I've seen, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
But what the States Act does is it's first of all, it says, well, we're going to eliminate federal raids on businesses that are compliant in states that have laws, which they've already basically taken the budgeting out for that. So this would actually pass a law that is sort of following the budget. So almost like we were doing this in reverse. You'd think you'd pass a law, then amend the budget. We've done the opposite. We passed the budget first, and now we need to pass a law to sort of copy the train thought here. So at any rate, it supposedly eliminates raids on compliant places in compliant states. It would label activities in banking institutions as transactions and not trafficking. However, it doesn't completely tell banks you just go ahead, you're going to be perfectly fine. It just simply makes this notary change in definition that does provide them some protection, but not nearly as far as we'd like to see.
Sure. I would definitely think it does provide them with some protection, though, simply because it voids them responsibility of the trafficking. And then I think that's what it
may or it may not. Banks could still be held responsible for trafficking and also for illegal activities.
Okay.
They're still subject to the Anti-Money Laundering Act. They're still subject to quite a few different acts that do overlay and would potentially impact this. So it does, I guess, chip away at the degree of risk for a bank.
There you go. Yep.
But it doesn't provide 100% Loctite protection. And when you're looking at a FDIC insured institution, that's pretty much what they want. Is they want 100% guarantee you're not going to come and seize assets, or the bank's assets, or our customers' assets, and for us participating in this activity. So I don't know that it does enough for the banking, but it does at least step in that direction.
That's good.
Some other things that it doesn't do is it would not provide protection for employment. Okay, so like we were talking about before the podcast began, what you do on your own time should be your own time.
Sure.
And of course, if you're to show up on your job, and obviously should not be high, employers should have the ability to protect themselves to make sure that their employees are not high or intoxicated.
Well, sure.
However, it does not provide the protection to the individual that if you were a cannabis consumer, you'd be protected and be able to get a job.
Right.
So, for example, right now, if I'm a alcohol consumer, there's nothing that says I'm going to be disqualified from getting any particular job out there. Obviously, I can't be drunk when I show up for work.
Right.
So we want the same sort of rights when it comes to cannabis, and I don't think it's asking for too much.
No, I think that's
another thing that you would think would be sort of automatically covered, but it is not, is organ transplant. If you have someone who's a cannabis consumer and they're also on the organ transplant list, meaning they're waiting for someone to donate something. They would be blocked, and currently they are right now. They are blocked from being on that list because they have cannabis in their system,
right?
Which is completely ridiculous to deny someone that service because they may have cannabis in their system. So there's quite a few things that this bill does not do. It's really, I think, a shortcomings of what we need to see. But it was a knee-jerk reaction. It was posted up, proposed.
And what bill was this? This is response.
It's called the States Act.
And this is response to Trump's.
Basically, yeah.
Okay,
it was just thrown on the books. It proposed last week.
Right.
And there's other bills out there. Like we just talked about the fact that there's 57 different bills that are proposed at the federal level in regards to opioid crisis. Okay. There's other bills that are proposed in regards to cannabis crisis as well. And one of those has been on the list now for a long time, is a Rohrabacher-Blumenauer amendment, which has a lot of the same provisions that we just talked about in the States Act, but they go a lot farther in protecting banks, protecting individual rights, protecting states, and so on and so forth. So to me, the States Act is really sort of just a dumbed down version of the Rohrabacher-Blumenauer amendment. I don't see why we can't just have our senators, like the ones who proposed the States Act, just simply offer support to what's already been proposed.
Sure.
It's not starkly different. It's definitely a watered down version, but with the president stepping up, his kind of do a little watered down version of what he said, so on and so forth. And we've talked about this on the program before, where the Controlled Substances Act was passed by an executive order back in 1971 by Richard Nixon. Right. So it would only make sense that the president could also have a change to adjust that act.
Right.
Or to
use an executive order to undo that.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yes.
So in a way, I feel like Trump's passing the buck and he's just sort of fluffing things out and maybe using it. Yeah. Obviously, some senators felt compelled to introduce something. And a lot of times these bills are introduced not to necessarily get something done, but to garner support. And so that they can go to the voter office, in August or in November and say, well, I supported marijuana change. Right. Look at these bills that I introduced. And I really feel that sort of action is unnecessary. I don't think that individuals like myself are really going to care whether you introduced it personally or you decided to support someone else's bill.
Sure.
It was maybe better written, better planned, better prepared.
Sure.
So at any rate, there we go.
Right.
So that's what has happened on the federal level, and that's basically where we stand.
Right.
So, maybe Trump will do something down the road. He certainly has shown that he has the gall to do whatever he wants. So maybe this would be one of those things that would be a positive.
Look, I hope so. I hope he does something gutsy like this, and I hope I hope he's remembered as doing some good things for our community if we got him in there. I mean, I hope he does something positive. I just and I
see it when I believe it.
Yeah, I'll see it when I believe it. And I a lot of times we can't really measure a president too well until after the presidency, and then more news and more details get revealed about things, and you find out how things come into play or how they came about.
Absolutely.
And so oftentimes, that's so. And I mean, I look back at President Barack Obama's presidency, and I really think that he could have done a lot more than what he did. In my opinion.
With regards to cannabis, or just in general?
Just in general, but definitely in regards to the criminal justice system reform, cannabis reform, drug policy reform. He could have done a lot more, I believe, and I think that he should have. I think that in his second term, he could have done more especially even just if he would have at least made a really strong effort at getting the ball rolling and the conversation started right before he left office. Even if he didn't himself, if he would have just hammered it home with conversation to hand off to the next president and just say, hey, I really think you should do this. There's nothing wrong with that in politics, because sometimes you have limitations.
Not to cut you off here, but there's a recent article here right from Forbes.com. You guys can check this out, and it's talking about Trump looks to trade cannabis legalization for Justice Department nominees. So a lot of times these talking points and things that we hear about in the news, they're really
for other reasons.
They're fluff. They're bargaining chips, so on and so forth. So certainly Obama could have done something more on his way out, and this issue today is 100% less controversial than it was even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, for any president, I feel at this point to step in and to do something, I feel is way past due. Right. And I don't think it's controversial anymore.
Not anymore.
I don't think so. All right, let's move on from politics.
Well, what's one last thing? Well,
okay.
Did you talk about the state ballot initiative that the Republicans have not?
I think we talked about that last week.
Okay. You covered that last week. Last week's podcast?
Just to reiterate,
right. Just to recap on that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's going to the voters.
Legislature didn't get it done.
They didn't get it done, so it's going to the voters, and that means it'll take a 75% majority to change it or in any way or amend it in any way.
Right.
That's really good news. I think this legislation this ballot initiative going to the voters this fall, I think this is a great opportunity. I think everyone should be registered to vote. Everyone should vote for this. And I say that maybe if maybe there's a lot of the corporate aspects to the bills and whatnot that I don't like either. But I definitely think there's language in there that protects a lot of us and will help strengthen the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. And I believe that because I think that we're going to have a change in politics in Lansing too. I'm certainly one of those candidates, looking forward to winning this election and being down there to represent you and to see that change happen. With all that said, I want to make sure that if this law is passed, we make sure the money goes to roads and schools. I want to make sure that the legislature does not act upon it or the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act and try to undermine them in any way or remove any civil rights that the voters have certainly voiced their opinion on that they wanted. So with that, I'm looking forward to it passing. I certainly think that it will pass. I think right now it's on the track. Nothing can stop it. It will be in front of the voters. I think it will pass by a 60% majority or
definitely
greater.
Be in front of the voters.
Yes, and so with all that, I think I'm just very excited about it. I'm very excited about this election year. I'm very excited to see a Democratic candidate for governor. Really, any one of the governor candidates right now are on the Democratic Party are pro-cannabis. That's favor to our cause. Also, the Attorney General, Dana Nessel, if she's elected, which I certainly hope everyone gets out to vote and votes especially also for her, that'll be a significant win for the cannabis community. She's the first Attorney General in the state of Michigan, candidate for Attorney General in the state of Michigan ever to be vocal about her support of cannabis. So with that, I am also looking forward to being among these candidates elected to represent you, and I think it's going to be a good year, Jeremy. So with that, I'm looking forward to Friday. So,
well, going over the measure, the ballot measure, I know that I guess in our community, in the medical marijuana community, there is definitely a split of people that want to support this and people that don't.
Of course.
And I think that the best thing to do is to read the actual ballot language. You can go to ballotpedia.org, pull it up, and actually read the text of the proposal. Okay.
Yes.
Now, of course, obviously, the language there and having it being put into action are two different things.
Sure.
But if you read this material here, and if you have time, watch the debate that I mentioned earlier with Jeffrey Hank. Jeffrey Hank is one of the attorneys that was really responsible for drafting this language. I know he wasn't solely responsible, but he had a big part to do with it.
Big part to play in it, sure.
And he, in detail, sort of explains in the first 15 minutes of that debate the intent behind the law and also some of the details in it as well. And I think it would put to rest some of the fears that our community is looking at. And I know that, especially with the MMFLA and the way that was passed,
right,
and the way that it's being rolled out,
right,
there's a large group of Michigan patients and caregivers that feel completely alienated by that.
Yes, absolutely.
And really will not be taking part in the program because of the way that it's been designed and the way that it will continue to function.
Exactly.
And I guess that, yes, there are similarities between that program and this proposal for legalization. But I think that some of the similarities are good and some of them are bad. One of the things that I thought was interesting that Jeff Hank pointed out in the debate is that this program, if you will, for recreational cannabis in Michigan would be administered by LARA. Now, many of the issues that we have faced and seen so far with the MMFLA that have been bad, put it that way. They've been negative. Things that we did not want to see.
Bad interpretations and stuff like that.
Absolutely. People on the board that, really shouldn't be there. That board would have no bearing on the recreational part, and it would be solely up to the department people in LARA to run this program. Just like they were responsible to run our medical marijuana program the first 8 years that we had it.
Sure.
So, and they still are responsible for the original program today. So they have the capability of doing this program, and I think that some of the negative connotations that have come from the MMFLA board, it just would not be a factor, because this law doesn't allow for the creation of a board of that sort, and it wouldn't be there. Some of the other things that the law does do is it allows for home cultivation, which is one of the big things that they wanted to sort of strip away if our legislatures were going to pass it on their own, which they didn't. But it does allow for home cultivation, and it also allows for industrial hemp production as well, and I think that that's a big thing there. One of the other things that Jeff Hank was keen to point out in his debate was that this bill was created, or this language was created, to encourage micro business, small business growth, and to actually keep it competitive, so that is where the benefit of the economy is at, and where it will be created and where it will continue to thrive. Unlike some other people in the state that would like to see this be more of a corporatized sort of monopoly, if you will. State ran, so on and so forth. So am I personally confident that the state will sort of delegate and delineate this program according to the sort of context that it was drafted in? No, I'm not. Because I know that they picked apart our Michigan medical marijuana law to pieces and did everything they could to sort of make it difficult, if you will, on all levels of administration, from LARA through our state police and state governor, vice lieutenant governor. I mean, every single level of our state government did every attempt that they could to muddy the water in our medical marijuana program, and I don't really believe that that's not going to happen with the recreational. That's going to happen no matter what law passes. But I don't think that this is a bad law. And I think that just like anything, the devil's in the details. So no matter what we pass when it comes to recreational legalization of cannabis here in Michigan, we're going to have to keep close tabs on the people that are administering the program. And I think that that's something that we have lost the contact with, lost the ability, lost the motivation to do so. And if you look at not just how our medical marijuana program is being handled, but how our state programs are being handled in general, we need to have a lot more transparency, and we need to have a lot more accountability. And if we don't do that as citizens and as a public, things are not going to change. And it doesn't matter what law they pass, because, again, the devil's in the details, and the folks who administer these laws, it's sort of their privy to interpret them. And say, well, that's not what it really means. And this is what it means. And we've seen how that works.
And so, I want to stress this point too, because this is why I stress to everyone that it's important to pay very close attention to this year's election, both in the primary election and in the general election. And I say this is because in the primary election is going to be a big deal, because this is the governor's race. And we've got to have the right candidate, the strongest candidate going forth, if we want that individual to beat the other candidate that we don't want. And I think you all know what I mean. We need to also pay close attention to the Attorney General's race, because Attorney General candidate Dana Nessel is vital to our cause. And I say this because she will be the Attorney General if elected, and she will have the ability to have discretion over the policy and the level of enforcement priorities of law enforcement throughout the state. And she can do this by bypassing anything the governor has to say, anything the legislature has to say, within the confines of law, of course, but she'll keep law enforcement on the straight and narrow and keep them off our back, and I think that's a big deal.
And I think
I think that's
they understand that the Attorney General for the state sort of sets the tone
exactly
when it comes to law enforcement.
There it is.
And right now in our state,
and so does the governor in a lot of ways. Because when you think that the governor's the highest head of the state of Michigan, that's it. If that person hates cannabis, you better believe that mentality trickles down across everybody else.
It does. Right now, there are still cases in Michigan where patients are being tried for having too much medication.
Yep.
And we're not talking about the guy who was trying to ship 100 pounds out of state.
Right.
We're talking about 60, 70-year-old people who have legitimate medical conditions, who are being caught in the gray area, and they're being prosecuted by your state. And that is a directive from people like the Attorney General, from people like the governor, because those people tell our state police what to do, what to go after, what to spend their time on. And so if you understand the incredible amount of waste that goes into prosecuting someone like that, a 70-year-old person who is sick and may or may not have too much medication, what is the value in that? When you can clearly see that this is personal possession, there's no trafficking going on, it's for medicinal purposes, and yet we are still trying to pinpoint these fine lines and spend a lot of money and resources to do so, when really it's unnecessary, and it is being done almost on a vendetta. And I also want to add this too. As state representative, one of the first things that I would like to do when I get elected state representative is, of course, that would be after November and after this legalization ballot measure passes. This will grant representatives like myself and others the confidence and the means to say to everyone else, hey, it's time to not only end all criminal penalties for cannabis, and we should do that furthermore legislatively, but we should also release anyone in prison and in jail that's currently there for a marijuana violation, and those records, everyone's record, no matter if you're out of jail or not, and whatever. I don't care if it's a felony, I don't care if it's a misdemeanor, I don't care if it's a 7411. Everyone's record needs to be expunged, and that's one of the things that I advocate to all of you that I will work hard to try to bring about. I'm only one voice of 110, but you know that I will be voicing for that to happen. I really feel strongly about that, and I feel there's a lot of support behind me about that. And if we could do that, it'd be a major success. So I agree. I'm going to give you one more plug before we change subject, and that is, it's not enough today to just have candidates that are pro-cannabis. We need candidates, when it comes to cannabis anyways, that understand the entire dichotomy of the industry, whether it's either protecting grandma who needs protection, or if it's protecting the small business in the small town who also needs protection there, or whether it be protection for the patient to make sure they're getting what they're supposed to get,
or protection for the caregiver.
You need to have people that can intricately understand the issues and who aren't afraid to get educated. And I think that's one of the big downfalls of a lot of our legislators, is that they sort of get to this echelon of social acceptance, and now all of a sudden they know everything, and we need to continue to learn. So all right, in the spirit of that, you need to get outside. All right, you need to get outside and enjoy this wonderful summertime that we have.
Weather, yes.
And one of the best things you can do to learn is to go hiking. So we have a list of strains that are good for hiking.
Oh.
All right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. So get out your I was going to say Pokédex. Pottydex. That doesn't sound right either.
No.
Weedadex. Weedadex. Make some notes, all right? So these are good strains. They're going to get you feeling good, get you moving, and sort of free that frontierial spirit, if you will.
Nice.
So, all right, Black Dahlia. It says the description behind this says you simply can't be uptight or in a bad mood with this. I don't think we need to know any more about Black Dahlia. The next one's called Willie Nelson. I think that's enough said. The next one's called Cheesequake, which I happen to love. Love Cheesequake. Haven't seen it in a while.
Haven't either. Yeah.
Man, that's some tasty stuff. But it says it's perfect for slaying dragons of all sizes.
Nice.
Cinderella 99, another classic that I have not seen in a bit. Cinderella 99 says it's great for the active individual, and I would have to agree. So that's a nice one.
I have had that before.
Another one here. This isn't one I've not tried. I would love to, though. It's called Redwood Kush. Obviously, sort of a Northern California strain. It says the comforting, warming high of Redwood Kush is reminiscent of sitting by a campfire, surrounded by friends, and the company of looming sugar pines.
That sounds like a good time.
It does. Now, this one is one of my favorites that it's a rare occasion you get a good one, but man, when you do, you know it. It's Alaskan Thunderfuck. True story.
I love these names.
Yeah. For those of you that have tasted, you know what I'm saying.
Aren't you glad you're on the internet so you can actually say that name, though?
True. That's the name. I didn't make this up.
You know, people laugh about the names, but I say, look at. Have you been looking at the names of cars lately?
If they make a car called Thunderfuck, I am buying that thing. I'm telling you right now. All right. ATF. Another one on here that actually I do enjoy is Blue Dream. Nice and creamy. It's also, I'll tell you from experience, it is a very smooth, nice cannabis. All right, another one, Orange Crush. That one's pretty popular. Afghan Kush, another one of my faves. Let's see here. Golden Goat. I'm not familiar with Golden Goat.
Never heard of it.
Sounds good. It says it's not to be smoked indoors.
So no indoor sacrifices.
It says at least not for Ignatius. When Ignatius smokes Golden Goat, it causes Ignatius to speak in the third person and open all doors and windows. All right, that's Golden Goat. Critical Mass. I haven't seen that in a long time. Cookie Wreck. Obviously, you got the cookies and the train wreck. Exodus Cheese. Now I think they're just trying to name all my favorite tasty strains. I love Exodus Cheese. I have not seen that in a while. There's just a few. All right, so there's a few strains that you might want to pick up if you're going on a hiking excursion. Speaking of strains, I want to say congrats to all of our G3C members who killed it out at the Cannabis Cup this last weekend.
Oh, right. I
understand we had quite a few winners.
Nice.
I know Max and Special Blend Productions were killing it out there. I know that we had Cush's My Cologne out there representing and performing. That's freaking awesome. Greg Joslin nailing it.
Awesome.
We also had, I believe, 710 Savant. I heard he did a sweep in one of the concentrate categories, or a few categories, obviously, if he took a sweep.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know all the details. I'm sure we had plenty other friends and family out there from the G3C crew who were making it happen, getting themselves recognized, having a great time, and getting awarded. So congrats to all of you out there. If I get like a list or whatever, I'll be glad to share it. I don't have a list today. I apologize. It's too fresh. It's too new. But you guys know who won, and congrats to you. So great job representing. I love hearing that, our caregivers right here in Michigan are producing the absolute finest, top shelf material.
That's awesome.
It's world renowned, world recognized, and it just goes to show that you have the capability, you have the power, and you don't need to have some big corporate company to make your stuff better and package it for you. You just need to do a good job in the garden like you did, and it shows.
Put a lot of love into it, and it'll come to fruition.
With your cotton mouth. Yes. All right. Well, any other info you want to share on the show today?
Other than
Kim Jong-il, he's smoking weed now. He is. He's smoking weed.
Nice.
And we love him.
All I can see is the green screen. Check out the picture later.
If he wants to do a summit at the G3C, our doors are open. See you. I'd be glad to host him and Dennis Rodman. We'll make our own damn Nobel Peace Prize.
Right on. Well, I am certainly looking super forward to this Friday. I'm looking forward to seeing John Trabek out there at the club. I've been telling John about the G3C for a long time. Said you got to see it. He's excited about seeing it. He will be out there. He will have copies of his Michigan Supreme Court case, and I think that he will be signing autographs.
Cool.
To that. So be sure to get out there and get your autograph signed signature of his significant win. And I mean, hey, frame it, hang it up, because I think that's going to be worth something someday. I think that it's going to be it's a piece of history that you can't get anywhere else. So this Friday,
it's a landmark case.
And
folks. It's one of those cases that is reviewed and referred to constantly in lower courts.
Yes.
So
and you know what? I want to remember to everyone that Turbeek decision gave us the medical marijuana community, the caregivers and the patients, the authority to go to our local municipalities and say, you cannot restrict the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. It gave you that right to do that.
Yeah, and I know a lot of folks around here aren't, really feeling pressured by that.
Right.
But if you were in Troy, Michigan right now, you'd be knowing exactly what we're talking about.
Exactly. Or anywhere else, any municipality that tries to restrict your rights under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, just know that the Turbeek decision is in your favor, and it prevents the communities from doing that. And you have legal recourse to stop them. So just remember that. And that was all done by Mr. John Turbeek, attorney John Turbeek.
That's right. So please come out on Friday, 4 to 7. You can get to meet the man, the myth, the legend, and also come out and help support Mr. Eric Gunnels in his bid for state representative in the 48th district. So
thank you.
Excited to have you out there.
Super excited.
Hopefully we can support you strongly. And so you guys tell your friends and family, come hang out Friday evening, this Friday.
Yep.
Not this evening. This week.
Right. This week. This Friday.
Friday. Cool. All right. Thank you, John, for being back in the studio with us. Love being here at All Points TV. Please check out some of the other podcasts for other pertinent information around the area. And join us back here on the Genesee County Compassion Club show. Eric, thanks for being in the studio with me today. Definitely
great to be here.
Pleasure to have you with us. See us Friday at the club. See us every day at the club. All right? Cool. You guys have a good week. We'll see you.